So, hey Johan, how are you doing this morning there?
Hey Brandy, it's bloody cold over here. It's winter. It's 4 degrees
Oh, I wish it
Celsius.
was cold. Oh my goodness. I wish it was cold here. So, I'm going to be talking with you this morning where you're at, this night where I'm at, on the treason charges that you um, filed on everyone who conspired against you. Basically, I have them in front of me. So we were just going to kind of go over what we could go over without making it too long, and then we will continue the next time. So I'll start out by saying that it starts out by saying that I was the director of New Generation Arms Management. It was an 80% owned BEE company. You were accredited with the National Conventional Arms Control Committee and were accordingly permitted to trade in war materials. And that's number one. So I guess can you start out by telling us a little bit of, because this is kind of a risky thing to do in my opinion. Can you tell everyone your reasoning for doing this, and just tell us a little bit of background on these charges, on what forced you to act in this way?
Brandy, you know, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. In South Africa, the state is totally incompetent. The state has been eroded by criminals. It's like ants coming into your house and chewing it to bits. And you think the house is still standing. Not for long. And this is the problem with the South African authorities. I've pressed so many criminal charges. I'm tired, I'm sick and tired, I'm hurtful of pressing criminal charges because nobody does anything. Because the criminals control the legal system. They control the National Prosecuting Authority, the NPA. And believe me, not from 94, prior to 94, a long way. And the reason, everything that I talk about in the treason charges are part and parcel of various court actions where the judges have gone out of their way to sabotage us under instruction from the intelligence services. Now the big thing is, it just got to the point where I said, enough is enough. Because on 10 December 2018, two repertorians from the NPA sent us a letter stating they had taken a decision in 2014 not to prosecute. Now 2014 to 2018 is 4 years if you do your arithmetic. And if you know how to do it.
Right.
Why were we never informed thereof? Because in 2016 we were forced to liquidate the company. In other words, what happened to ensure that we had to be destroyed financially? And it's very simple. The fact of the matter is that Tory Pretorius is part of a network of criminals, including Colonel DPT Smith, Jamie Smith, the jam stealer I mentioned in the criminal charges, in the treason charges, along with Colonel Philip Kramer, from Air Force Intelligence, another criminal who has gone out of his way to ensure that things are stolen for certain people's benefit. And the country suffers. Now, the main thing is that Tory Pretorius is a part and parcel here of, and what we have is we have a big Freemason network. They all link up to the Freemasons. So I bought these treason charges, and believe me, nobody has contacted me until today. Look at the date at which I bought it. Nobody has contacted me because they don't know what to do. So I've also sent this now to the Zondo Commission. I'm also taking it to Judge Mogoeng, the Judge President in South Africa, a real, solid, honest Israelite, if ever you came across one. While he is a Zuma
So-
appointee, yeah, I'm listening.
So you feel that he will look at the case fairly instead of just ignoring it?
The point is, I think Judge Mogoeng will apply his mind because he knows what's
Right.
happened. He's seen what's happening. And the big thing is, I've heard that he wanted to resign as judge president because the pressure is just too much. I hope he does not resign because the country needs him. Believe you me, the country needs him. So
It's really
obviously-
sad when the
Yeah.
pressure to do the right thing, which is to be non-biased as a judge, is too much for you to want to continue. That's your number one job.
Yeah, Brandy, the judges in South Africa, specifically the white judges, are useless, especially the Afrikaner judges. They're useless and they're brown-nosing for positions. That's a fact. George Stamanovich,
Right.
before he was killed in Serbia, told me that how often they sat with the judges when I came to court in order to scupper my actions. And then there was one fucker by the name of Graham Bester, SC advocate. And look, he's bad news. He used to be a prosecutor. He would go in and intimidate the judges. And you could see it. I was in one case where he wasn't there the morning when the judge nearly gave us the case, a black judge. After lunch, the judge turned 180 degrees against us. That was when Graham Bester walked into court. And it's all about one thing. These assholes, and assholes they are there only for one thing. That's for money and for women. Now, the legal system has been fatally compromised. And the big thing is, as I said, it starts with the NPA. The NPA, as the prosecuting authority, let me just give you some background, runs their own researchers, detectives. There's no mandate in law for them to have people such as this on their payroll. Harry Nell, the so-called bulldog who put Oscar Pistorius in prison, had exonerated 23 members of the NPA a couple of years back, along with Tory Pretorius, because they had their hands in the till, including a guy by the name of Leask. Leask is today part of his team working at AfriForum. Now tell me, if you come from such a background, you're holier than thou, on what basis? How can your hands be clean? How can you run a clean operation? You've been compromised fatally. But this is what it is. Because there's no respect for the law. Because you see, everybody thought, after watching LA Law years back, the legal profession is the way to go. But in the legal profession, they don't even bake one bread. They sell their time like a prostitute. Although I would think that with a prostitute, you'd have better satisfaction than with the legal profession. Because win or lose, they must get their money. I mean,
Right.
I've now had a situation when an advocate blackmailed my previous attorneys on the basis of you had to do work for them and then you refused to release it because what about the monies outstanding in Erasmus's case? Now Erasmus's money was stolen by the state. And whatever way you go, I mean, I've been talking, look, I talk to everybody, anybody. I don't care if it's my biggest enemy. I talk to them because there's always a common ground somewhere. But the way in which things are done, it is astounding to see what has been happening. So my only option now is treason charges. Now, in that treason charges, I put certain people's name there who will be acting as witnesses. And why I don't mention them as witnesses? So their lives will not be endangered. So let them now figure out who are the witnesses in this case. Because the main thing is, you know, in South Africa, the press is being controlled by the intelligence services. Sam Sol from Amabungani,
Right.
I was told by George Stamanovich had a cocaine problem. And when I said to Sam, because I know him, I said to him, Sam, what is the story about you and your coke? Sam went quiet and he broke all contact until today. It's the same with Noseweek. They all have contact to people who are so-called specialists in the media field with information, but they are all intelligence operatives or pimps. Because, I mean, Erika Gibson had a lot to write about me when they raided my house and my businesses on 4 December 2012. I said to Erika, where's my side of the story? The response was she didn't need it. I said, is that so? She wrote a story and then in the end she says they didn't arrest him. So it was very clear. They were looking for any which way to have me arrested. And believe me, they came in with They came in with false affidavits, which was signed by Vanessa de Tooy, the Director of Compliance at the NCACC. Now, the NCACC is a cabinet committee under Act 41 of 2002, National Conventional Arms Control Committee, which falls under the Wassenaar Agreement from the United Nations. Now, what I do not understand is that South Africa has become a threat to the continent, not only the subcontinent, because there's no control on arms movement anymore these days. You don't know what's going where, who's getting what, what's flowing into South Sudan, for instance. Why is the United Nations not exercising their prerogative in order to close down the South African arms industry and do an investigation for 6 months? So the whole situation is that it's a big mess. Okay, I'm listening.
I was just saying, I wonder the same thing myself. I can come to no conclusion except that they're allowing it to continue. I know I don't know more than they do. There's no way in hell that I know more than my government or the UN or the EU about the situation. That's not possible.
You know, at this stage,
so they know the truth.
Yeah, I've received information that this guy from BLF has got 3,000 young black South Africans being trained in Rwanda. Military.
Yeah, right.
For what rhyme or reason? One other source told me that a couple of months ago that this guy was receiving 2 million rand a month from the intelligence services. For what rhyme or reason? He's an uncouth person. You can't speak to him because he's totally over the top with hate and with greed. Now, when you look in history, what was Hitler's big thing? Hitler was a kleptomaniac. He was a kleptomaniac who offered up the German nation. There's no argument about it. All the riches that were stolen. Now, we have the same situation here. We have the black Hitlers.
So, I wanted to ask you a question. Oh yeah, that's exactly what you know what I say. I've watched Malema. I've watched him, his speeches, and I've studied him, and I could swear that he works from Mein Kampf. I believe that with everything in me, that he's read that book and that he uses that knowledge to speak. It's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. But I wanted to ask you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong in what you're saying about Mein Kampf, because Mobutu used to read Mein Kampf as well. Believe me, remember in 1972, in 1978, the ANC went to see Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam because in a normal democratic environment, they would not win. And he showed them how they could win any election by sowing fear and chaos. And it was evident since 1994. But you see, the main thing is that we're talking about treason charges, and I'm going very far because what has happened to me has opened so many doors. I come from an intelligence background. So in other words, I would go looking for who's the fuckers who are behind this. Who are they?
Right.
For instance, Jeff Radebe was the chairperson of the NCACC. Jeff Radebe is now going to Washington as ambassador. And he's the brother-in-law to Cyril Ramaphosa along with Patrice Motsepe. What I've just told you is not public knowledge yet. All right? Jeff Radebe was the chair at the NCACC. He signed off for them to withdraw our permits for trading without due process, without any evidence. Listen to what I'm saying. Without any evidence. Now I'm asking you, what must I do?
Right.
They stole my money, 23.9 million in total in one day. What must I do? They tried to destroy us financially, me and my partners. What the fuck must we do? Respect the law? I think the time is running out very fast for respect of the law, because to give an example, I've just told you about the letter of the NPA, and I've said this before and I'm saying it again. Last year, March, I was on a visit to the Bahamas for a consultation and I got arrested for suspicion of firearms. And I said to the commander, I did not know I can conjure a firearm with my bare hands out of molecules in the air. Although I was released 30 minutes later due to the intervention of the American ambassador in the Bahamas, not the South Africans. The commander said to me, the reason I was held up was the request had come from the United States Embassy in Pretoria, Homeland Security, to lock me up for 3 days and then to release me. Intimidation. Remember, 2014 there was no case already. Now this comes via the American Embassy. I'm suddenly red flagged. For what reason? Who works for who? In other words,
By the American Embassy?
Yeah, I understand that the guys in the American Embassy is given girls by the South Africans. Now, you don't have to imagine what happens. But this is what happened. What's happening? And do you think the military attaché comes back to me? No, because they don't read the documents. They don't understand what's happening. And they are there, and they've got a knife against their throats from the South Africans. If there's one embassy that's been fatally compromised, it's the American Embassy in South Africa. You think the one in Moscow is a problem with the Russians? Go and look at the South African Embassy. Every operation of the Americans in South Africa, whichever department, whichever of the 19 intelligence services of America is around, there's a major compromise going on where people have been compromised. And it carries on from one to the next to the next. Why? For what reason? Are the South African girls so good? Damn me. You wanted to ask a question. Please carry on.
I was just going to say that there was one judge, I think fairly in the beginning, that really let them have it. That he said, what other reason would you have for doing this than trying to, I forget the exact wording.
To piggyback on our endeavors. That was Judge Tuchten. Now,
Okay.
Interesting enough, the military made sure we had no money to continue with the case. And in the end, that case became a total fuck up. But let me give you another example.
Yeah.
In March of 2019, the liquidator in the gum matter went to court because they're trying to steal our demo samples, along with Tory Pretorius. Make no mistake, Tory Pretorius is very instrumental in everything. I'll come back to Tory now. So they were in court, and the state's legal advisors, the Indian guy from Durban and the black guy from Johannesburg, I've got their names, I've still got a press charge against them as well, said to the judge, no, but Erasmus cannot see the weapons because he's Boeramag. listen to me. If you want to discredit anybody in South Africa, you call them Boeramag. The judge, the legal team for the liquidator said, but Erasmus is not here. I'm acting for Ngam. So despite that, the judge gave us the right to visit the weapons because we had already a court order from 2012. And this is what it's about. Must we put out a hit list? Last night, Mark Batchelor was assassinated in Johannesburg. A soccer player, well known. You know, I mean, I told you last week.
I think I read about that.
Yeah, I told you about the assassinations around me. Since 29 until today, 93 people have died around me, literally around me. Unfortunately, some good ones, rest of them dubious characters. The big thing is, I'm not lifting a hand, I'm not doing anything. I've just said, I forgive you guys. Because that gives me peace of mind. But you know what? They don't want me to continue with my life. They keep on interfering. They keep on intercepting my communications. They keep on sabotaging my business. And this is where Vanessa de Tooy, whom I specifically mentioned in these charges, she was a director of compliance at the NCACC. She sat on in the cabinet meetings.
Right.
Now, I met Vanessa in the beginning 2000s when we were doing the first consult investigation onto the 320 rifles that went to Jordan, with a loss of about $300 million at that stage for the fiscus of South Africa, as well as the export of redundant ammunition despite us offering a better price. That's where I met her. And Igor Shikovic was operating under the name the Verlian Initiative, along with Mechanology, Craig Savides. Igor Shikovic then launched Paramount Logistics with a bang. Of course, with all the money that we just parked in Cyprus, because that's where the Ishkovich family has been hoarding the money. And guess where Vanessa de Tooy is working today? Guess. Paramount Logistics. Paramount Logistics. She and her miserable little husband, who is a brown nose, Marty de Tooy, who's a brown, Marty, who's a brown noser of format. He used to be chief of staff of January Masilela. How small the world really is.
Right, who was also died
assassinated.
Yeah.
So when we come back to the treason charges,
like I said.
I mean, one coincidence, a second coincidence becomes highly improbable. The third one is not a coincidence anymore. So the situation with the treason
one thing
charges,
they tried.
Yeah?
Go ahead. I was just going to say one thing they tried to do was they tried to say that your permit was no good, and that they made false claims about your permit, which were untrue. Correct. The laws did change, but they did not change until after you had already acquired the weapons, ordered the weapons, and after you had gotten your permit. I don't know the laws in South Africa, but in America, were something like that to happen, your permit's still valid until it expires.
Brandy, you're quite correct. You see, what happened was, we delivered on latest 31st of October 2011 on everything. The regulations were promulgated in April 2012, 6 months later. Now, interesting enough, this narrative is the narrative held forward by Chris McAdam, another advocate at the NPA, and Turi Pretorius. But they never referred to the regulation because they knew on referring to the regulation, they would be caught out. They were using all these words of non-compliance, etc., but not stating why and when and where. Because why? they are basic criminals. There is no other excuse for them. Believe me, they are criminals. Now, I can tell you, Tory Pretorius today is suffering of 4 types of cancer. My view is simply, somebody had poisoned him, and I know how. I just don't know who and when. But in any case, be that as it may, the narrative, I only found out earlier this year in an affidavit by one malicious military policeman, A.B. Chakanyuka, who's a Zimbabwean and who's been making all these affidavits. Of course, being Zimbabwean, it was easy. They say to him, either you make the affidavits or we deport you. And he was working as a military policeman.
Right.
He says, look, he says
You don't
dumb.
want to be deported back to.
Yeah. He's as dumb as ditch water. But be that as it may, he mentioned specifically the regulation by name and number. And that enabled me to link the dots. Now, what I further found very distressing, in June of 2012, when Judge Tuchten made his finding, there was a round table where Elsje Clark, as my attorney from Clark and Van Eck, and Jaap Solier SC were present, and on the side of the NPA was Chris McAdam, Susan Bukal, and Vanessa de Tooy. And they climbed into Elsje. And I found this very, very disturbing and astonishing, because the SC, why didn't he climb in? He is known as the guy who's got the best contacts at the NPA. Why did he hang Elsje out to be attacked in such a vicious fashion? It was to such an extent that when Elsje eventually spoke to me afterwards, I got a distinct feeling that she was harboring a thought of, I might be guilty. That is the extent to which they attacked her.
Wow.
They broke down her confidence. Elsje could have made her name that day as Dragon Slayer by taking the initiative and not waiting for the SC. Now, this is not, what I'm saying now is not normal, and I do not, that must not be seen at any stage that I'm holding it against her. But
Right.
that day, the advocate dropped the ball for everybody. But the main thing is, and why I'm going for these people in this treason charges, and specifically also Colonel Philip Kramer from Air Force Intelligence. He was the guy who was structuring all these attacks against me. Remember, he's sitting in the shade and he's operating, because from the beginning we picked up Air Force Intelligence was involved everywhere. We had our landing permits at Waterkloof.
Right.
The Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa gave us the permits. We landed the first plane on the Friday. The next plane was supposed to be landing on the 31st of October from Bulgaria on Waterkloof. 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, I find out my landing rights have been revoked for one other bullshit story by a, let me just think how I can put it in order not to be cursing very vociferously, by an idiot by the name of General Les Lombard, who pulled rank. The next morning, 10 o'clock, 31 October, the plane landed in Polokwane Gateway. As we pulled in with 2 Casper infantry attack vehicles, with 2 sections of Special Forces escorts, with 6 buggies, with a driver and 2 shooters on board from Corps Tactical. And these were all old 32 Battalion or 101 or Special Forces operators. Plus we had a small plane in the air to protect the convoy. But at that stage, Armscor and the NAL had gone out of their way to sabotage our agreements for storing of the goods. Everything was done to sabotage. When I really start talking about sabotage, you've got no idea. And behind it all sat pipe-smoking Tory Pretorius. Now, Tory Pretorius will say, but he was under orders from Sean Abrams. Sean Abrams is that incompetent excuse for a director of public prosecutions. But you know what? We have a law in this country, Act 2004, Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities. Section 34 says, if you suspect corruption, you must report it. If not, you will deem to be equally guilty.
Right.
I see
Exactly.
nobody of the NPA standing up. I see nobody. So why should the people at the NPA still be allowed to be walking around free? Why are they not locked up? Yes, South Africa's prison doesn't have enough
Because
space.
there's
That
no
is indeed true. Say again?
No law. I said because there is no law and order.
No, there are laws, but there's no
The
order.
laws,
And the order
right,
is
the
being
laws
subverted.
to mean nothing.
Correct. It's being subverted by
The
these white
criminals don't
assholes.
follow laws.
Yeah, the criminals, because they pay the advocates. They pay. If there's a lower form of life on earth, I would still like to meet it than an advocate. There are very few, I can say to you, that have honor and dignity. The rest, they even give prostitutes a bad name. And with that, they take the attorneys along with them. No, I'm not bitter. I'm talking the truth.
I know one of them. She just happens to be South African. Huh. I was going to ask you one more question because we're a little past 30 minutes. And that is, in your treason charges, you speak on the fact that even though that the stand-up signed off on this weapon coming in, that all of a sudden that they said they were not interested in the minigun, and that they had no interest in it. Which, I mean, common sense tells me your company is not going to spend that kind of money on a weapon that you can't sell, you know, without a prospect of a customer. You know, why would you just want it? So that sounds unbelievable to me that they just that they didn't want it. I don't believe that.
Brandy, what happened was, you must remember, I come from intelligence. I've got many networks myself. Yes, they've hamstrung me by stealing my money. Look, they stole it. We will still talk about this later on, about SARS, etc. Because even when we finish today, this is not the end.
I know.
The situation was they tried to have the gun forfeit to the state so they could get it for free. Firstly. Now,
Right.
Secondly, the guy who said South Africa doesn't need it is the number one jam stealer, Yami Smith, Colonel. He's an ex-mechanic of outboard engines on motorboats for SA Special Forces from 4 Special Forces, Langebaan, near Cape Town. Now, how can such a dimwit make a pronouncement such as this? What gives him the right to talk about strategic and tactical aspects? He has studied himself in as Senior Staff Officer, Research and Development at SA Special Forces. But he is not qualified to talk about it. And now you must remember one thing, the minigun, 3,000 rounds a minute, it's a fast fighting gun. If you use that on anything, because the big thing is, it's been proven, you use less ammunition with a minigun than with a normal machine gun. Because you walk those rounds in onto the target and you shoot in short bursts. Now when you have that devastating firepower, you are a force to be reckoned with. But then,
Right.
when they sabotaged me, because this is what it is, and this is where the treason charge come in. Till today, nobody has ordered a minigun, either from America or a tri-barrel 12.7 by 108 millimeter from China. China's also started building miniguns. The problem is
Right.
the Dillon minigun has got 2 clutches, while the Garwood minigun has got 1 clutch. So that was the minigun's original design during the Vietnam War by General Electric, and it would create a lot of stoppages.
Well, on an ending note, I had a theory about this myself, about the minigun and why no other minigun has been ordered or procured through anywhere, and where Arms Corps fits in to all of this. And it was just a thought, just a theory, but I guess it turned out not to be so crazy. Was that they were going to try to replicate the gun, so they wouldn't have to pay for it, make more than one. And
Brandy,
so this is something that
you are so spot on, because I was told the minigun was taken away by the now. It was shown to Hezbollah. Listen what I'm saying. It was shown to Iran. It was shown to China. When I asked for the visitor's book, they refused to give it to me, to the weapons. So, when they illegally attached the minigun, it was broken down to component form. It was taken from a safe at Beaumont.
Okay, so it was already broken down. They didn't break it down. It was already broken.
It was taken apart in order to be cleaned. They threw some of the components away. So the minigun is now nothing more than a gigantic doorstop. Hallelujah.
Wow.
So they cannot copy it, neither for Hezbollah, neither for the Iranians, and neither for the Chinese. But still the American embassy is sitting and very quiet. Again, I go back, the South African girls must have something else the rest of the world's women do not have. Because why do they control these Americans to such an extent?
I don't know, that's insane.
Thank you. Insane is the word.
All right, Johan, I'm going to let you get to your day. But I thank you for